Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another edition of Gambia Today, your daily source for the latest news, developments, politics, business, education, sports, society, and everything happening across the Gambia. If this is your first time visiting the channel, welcome. This channel is dedicated to telling Gambian stories. We will talk about our politics. We will talk about our history. We will talk about our economy. We will talk about sports. We will talk about entertainment. And of course, we will bring you the latest news from the Gambia. Today is Wednesday, August 12th, 2026, and there is quite a lot happening in the country. The political atmosphere is becoming increasingly intense as the December presidential election approaches. A new opposition coalition has been announced. The United Democratic Party is raising concerns about access to a major conference facility. There are important developments concerning the country's education system after the release of the 2026 WASSCE results. The government is continuing to launch major road projects. There are new concerns about the cost of political participation for women, and there are also questions being raised about government spending and the country's economy. So tonight, we're going to take these stories one by one. Let's begin with what may be the biggest political story of the day. Story 16 opposition groups form the Change Coalition. Today, 6 opposition parties and political movements announced a new coalition called Change. The name stands for Coalition for Hope, Accountability, National-renewal, Good Governance, and Equity. According to reports, the groups have spent approximately 18 months negotiating before reaching this agreement. That is significant, because for months, Gambians have been watching the opposition parties attempt to determine whether they can unite ahead of the December presidential election. And this new coalition could become an important part of that election story. The question now is simple: can the opposition stay together? That question has become one of the biggest issues in Gambian politics. The country has several opposition parties and political movements. Each has its own leadership. Each has its own supporters. Each has its own history, and each has its own vision for the future of the Gambia. Getting 6 political organizations to sit together and negotiate for 18 months is therefore not a small achievement. But announcing a coalition is one thing. Maintaining it is another. Political coalitions can be extremely difficult. The parties may agree on the general direction. But what happens when they disagree over candidates? What happens when they disagree over strategy? What happens when supporters of one party believe their leader deserves the top position? What happens when another party believes it has more support? Those are the questions that will determine whether change becomes a serious electoral force. The coalition will now have to convince ordinary Gambians that this is more than another political arrangement. Voters will want to know, what exactly is the coalition promising? What will it change? How will it improve the economy? What will it do about unemployment? What will it do about corruption? What will it do about healthcare? What will it do about education? What will it do about agriculture? And perhaps most importantly, why should Gambians vote for change? Those questions will become increasingly important as the election approaches. The presidential election is scheduled for December 5th, 2026. That means the political clock is ticking. And from now until December, we are likely to see more alliances, more political rallies, more manifestos, and more disagreements. So this new coalition is definitely something Gambians will be watching. Subscribe moment. And before we move to the next story, if you are enjoying this news update, please subscribe to the channel. This is a new Gambian news platform, and we want to build a strong community of people who want to stay informed about what is happening in our country. So subscribe, like the video, and share it with somebody who follows Gambian politics. Now let's move to another major political story. Story 2, UDP accuses authorities over conference center access. The United Democratic Party, commonly known as the UDP, is raising concerns about access to the Kairaba International Conference Center. The party says it has been denied equal access to the facility. This issue may appear to be about a building, but politically it is much bigger than that. Why? Because the Gambia is approaching a presidential election. Political parties need places where they can hold meetings, conferences, press events, and other political activities. If one political party believes it is being treated differently from others, that naturally creates concerns about political fairness. The UDP has accused authorities of political interference. That is a serious allegation. But it is important to distinguish between an allegation and an established fact. The public needs to hear the explanations from all sides. What happened? Why was access denied? Are there rules governing the use of the facility? Have other political organizations been allowed to use it? And are those rules being applied equally? These are the questions that matter, because in an election year, public institutions and public facilities are going to receive greater scrutiny. Political parties will be watching, journalists will be watching, civil society organizations will be watching, and ordinary Gambians will be watching. The broader principle is simple. Political competition should take place on a level playing field. If a political party has a complaint, it should have a mechanism through which that complaint can be addressed. And if the government believes the accusation is incorrect, it should explain its position clearly. The coming months will be important for the credibility of the electoral environment. Story 3. Women and the high cost of politics. Another major political story today concerns women. The Westminster Foundation for Democracy, or WFD, has highlighted the high financial cost of political participation as a major barrier to women's representation in the Gambia. This is an important issue, because when we talk about democracy, we often talk about elections, we talk about candidates, we talk about parties, we talk about voting. But democracy is also about who gets the opportunity to participate. If entering politics requires enormous amounts of money, that can discourage many people from participating, and women can be particularly affected. Imagine a talented Gambian woman who has leadership skills. She has ideas. She understands her community. People respect her. But then she looks at the cost of running for political office. Campaigning costs money. Transportation costs money. Political events cost money. Communication costs money. Advertising costs money. And suddenly, the question is no longer, can I lead? The question becomes, can I afford to participate? That is a serious democratic issue. The WFD's concerns, therefore, raise an important question for the Gambia. How do we make politics more accessible? Because if political participation becomes primarily a competition between people with money, the country risks losing talented leaders who simply do not have the financial resources to compete. And this issue is not only about women. It is also about young people. It is about people from rural communities. It is about people from less wealthy backgrounds. A healthy democracy should allow people to participate because of their ideas and leadership, not simply because they can spend the most money. And as the Gambia approaches the 2026 election, this conversation deserves serious attention. Story 4, WASSCE results. A major moment for Gambian students. Now let's move away from politics. Today is also an important day for Gambian students. The 2026 WASSCE results have been released, and the results are generating considerable discussion. According to The Voice, only 7.9% of candidates secured 5 credits, including English and mathematics, in the 2026 WASSCE. That figure deserves attention. Because education is one of the most important investments a country can make. Every year, thousands of Gambian young people sit examinations that can determine what happens next in their lives. Some will go to university, some will enter vocational education, some will look for employment, some will start businesses, and some may have to repeat subjects. For families, examination results can be emotional. Parents may have spent years paying school fees, buying uniforms, buying books, and supporting their children. Students may have spent months preparing. So when results arrive, there can be enormous pressure. For students who performed well, today is a day of celebration. Congratulations to them. But for students who did not achieve the results they hoped for, today's results should not be treated as the end of their life. One examination does not define a person. There are vocational pathways. There are opportunities to retake subjects. There are technical skills. There are entrepreneurship opportunities. There are different ways to build a successful life. But at the same time, the results should lead to serious national reflection. If only a relatively small percentage of students are achieving the required combination of credits, we need to ask why. Are students receiving enough support? Are classrooms overcrowded? Do teachers have enough resources? Are students receiving adequate learning materials? Are parents able to support children effectively? Are rural schools receiving the same opportunities as urban schools? These are difficult questions, but they are necessary questions, because behind every percentage is a young Gambian, and behind every young Gambian is a family hoping for a better future. Story 5. Government launches major road projects. Let's now talk about infrastructure. The government has launched a 52-kilometer Ngayan-Sanjal road project in the North Bank region and inaugurated a 12-kilometer Njau road in the Central River region. Foundation stones were also laid for additional road construction in Yalal, Tankankunda, and Farafeni. Road construction is one of those issues that can directly affect everyday life. For people in rural communities, a good road can make a huge difference. It can reduce travel time, it can improve access to markets, it can help farmers transport produce, it can make it easier for children to get to school, it can improve access to health facilities, and it can connect communities to the national economy. The government therefore sees road construction as an important part of infrastructure development. But there is also a political dimension. Whenever governments launch major infrastructure projects close to elections, citizens naturally ask questions. Are these projects part of a long-term development plan? Will they be completed on schedule? Will the quality be good? How much will they cost? And will rural communities actually benefit? One National Assembly member from Badabu has today criticized what he described as endless road foundation laying and called on President Barrow to prioritize farmers' problems. That criticism highlights an important debate. Roads matter, but farmers also matter, and infrastructure development has to go together with economic development. A farmer needs a road to transport crops, but the farmer also needs affordable fertilizer, access to seeds, access to financing, storage facilities, markets, and reasonable prices, so infrastructure should be part of a bigger economic strategy. Story 6. The President's Office and Government Spending. Another story attracting attention today concerns government expenditure. According to The Voice, the Office of President Adama Barrow spent $28.7 million in the first quarter, an amount reported to have exceeded its annual development allocation. This is an issue that deserves careful examination. Whenever citizens hear that a government institution has spent more than an allocation, the immediate question is, why? Was the spending related to an emergency? Was there a budget reallocation? Was the money spent on development? Was it operational expenditure? And what oversight mechanisms were involved? Government spending should always be transparent. Citizens have the right to know how public money is being used. At the same time, numbers reported in the media need to be understood in their proper budgetary context. A figure by itself does not necessarily tell us whether expenditure was lawful or unlawful. We need to understand the original budget. We need to understand revisions. We need to understand where the money came from. And we need to know what it was spent on. This is why parliamentary oversight, auditing, and public reporting are so important, because public money belongs to the people, and citizens deserve accountability. Story 7. Gambia's fiscal deficit. The country's economic situation is also receiving attention. The Voice reports that the Gambia's fiscal deficit has narrowed while capital spending fell by 36%. Now, these economic terms can sound complicated, so let's explain them simply. A government has income. It collects taxes. It receives other revenues. And it spends money on things such as salaries, infrastructure, healthcare, education, security, and government operations. When the government spends more than it receives, it has a deficit. A narrower deficit can sound positive. But there is another side to the story. If the deficit becomes smaller because government is reducing productive investment, that can create a different problem. Capital spending is often associated with infrastructure and long-term development. So when capital spending falls, we need to ask why. Is the government becoming more financially disciplined? Or are important development projects being delayed? The answer matters. The Gambia has limited financial resources, so policymakers face a difficult balancing act. They need to control debt. They need to manage spending, but they also need to invest in the future. And ordinary Gambians feel the consequences of these decisions. When the economy struggles, people notice it in food prices. They notice it in transportation costs. They notice it in electricity bills. They notice it in rent. They notice it in employment opportunities. So economic policy is not simply something discussed in government offices. It eventually reaches every household. Story 8. Safety concerns over electrical products. Another important national story concerns consumer safety. The Gambia Standards Bureau is preparing to intensify efforts against substandard electrical products entering the country. The issue was highlighted during a meeting of the National Electrotechnical Committee, held as part of a visit by Wafula Collins of the International Electrotechnical Commission Africa Regional Center. Why does this matter? Because electrical products are everywhere. Homes, businesses, schools, offices, construction sites, markets, people buy electrical appliances every day. But poor quality electrical products can be dangerous. They can cause electrical failures. They can damage other equipment. And in some cases, faulty electrical equipment can create serious fire or safety risks. The challenge is therefore finding the balance between affordability and safety. Consumers want cheaper products, but cheaper is not always better. Authorities need systems that can identify unsafe products. Importers need to follow standards. And consumers need information so they can make informed choices. This is a story that may not dominate political conversations, but it directly affects ordinary people. And sometimes, these quieter stories are just as important. Story 9. Gambia mourns Dr. Sidi Chernojama. Today also brings a moment of reflection as the Gambia mourns Dr. Sidi Chernojama. He has been remembered as an important figure in Gambian broadcasting and public life. His journey began in the 1960s at Radio Gambia, where his commentary helped bring Gambian football to life for listeners across the country. For older Gambians, radio was once the central source of information and entertainment. There was no YouTube, there was no Facebook, there was no TikTok, there were no smartphones. If you wanted to hear the latest football commentary, you turned on the radio. and voices like Dr. Jammeh's became part of people's memories. His influence also extended to younger broadcasters, including figures who would later become well-known in Gambian media. This is an important reminder of something we sometimes forget. A country's history is not only made by presidents and politicians, it is also made by teachers, journalists, broadcasters, sports commentators, artists, doctors, farmers, business people, and ordinary citizens. People who dedicate their lives to their professions can leave a legacy that continues long after they are gone. So today, as Gambians remember Dr. Sidi Cherno Jammeh, it is also a moment to remember the importance of Gambian broadcasting and the people who helped build it. Story 10: Politics and the 2026 election. Let's now return to the biggest story of the year, the 2026 presidential election. The election is scheduled for December 5th, and as of today, August 12th, we are entering a period when political activity is going to become increasingly intense. The formation of the Change Coalition is one indication of that. The UDP's dispute over conference center access is another. The discussion about the cost of political participation is another. And there are already multiple candidates and political movements preparing for the election. The next few months will therefore be critical. But what should Gambians look for? First, policies. Don't only listen to slogans, ask what each candidate actually plans to do. Second, the economy. What will they do about unemployment? What will they do about inflation? What will they do about agriculture? What will they do about public debt? Third, education. What will they do to improve learning outcomes? What will they do for teachers? What will they do for vocational education? Fourth, healthcare. How will they improve hospitals and health centers? How will they make healthcare more accessible? Fifth, governance. What will they do about corruption? What will they do about accountability? What will they do about institutions? And finally, national unity. The Gambia is a small country. We cannot afford politics that destroys relationships between communities. Political competition is normal. Political disagreement is normal. But after the election, Gambians still have to live together. We will still share the same roads, the same schools, the same hospitals, the same markets, the same country. So political leaders have a responsibility to compete without destroying the social fabric of the nation. A message to Gambian voters. As we approach December, I want to say something directly to Gambian voters. Do not allow politicians to make you hate your fellow Gambian. You can support one party. Your neighbor can support another. Your brother can support a different candidate. Your friend can have completely different political opinions. That is democracy. The important thing is that we remain Gambians first. Ask questions. Check information. Don't believe every rumor on social media. Don't share information simply because it supports your political side. And don't allow anybody to manipulate you with ethnic or religious divisions. Look at policies. Look at records. Look at character. Look at competence. And make your decision. That is how democracy becomes meaningful. Subscribe moment. If you agree with that message, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We're going to follow this election very closely. We will bring you political developments, candidate announcements, manifestos, debates, and major stories as they happen. But we will also continue covering the other side of the Gambia, sports, entertainment, history, business, and everyday life. So subscribe and become part of the community. Final roundup. Let's quickly recap today's major stories. First, 6 opposition parties and movements have announced the Change Coalition after approximately 18 months of negotiations. Second, the UDP is raising concerns about access to the Kairaba International Conference Center, describing the situation as political interference. Third, The Westminster Foundation for Democracy is highlighting the high financial cost of political participation, particularly as a barrier to women's representation. Fourth, the 2026 WASSCE results have been released, with reports indicating that only 7.9% achieved 5 credits, including English and mathematics. Fifth, major road projects have been launched in the North Bank and Central River regions, including the 52-kilometer Ngayan Sanjal project and the 12-kilometer Njao Road. Sixth, there is growing discussion about government spending, including reported expenditure from the Office of the President. Seventh, the country's fiscal deficit has narrowed, while capital spending has reportedly declined by 36%. Eighth, the Gambia Standards Bureau is moving against substandard electrical products, with consumer safety at the center of the issue. And finally, the country is remembering Dr. Sidi Cherno Jammeh, an important figure in Gambian broadcasting and sports commentary. Closing, and that brings us to the end of today's edition of Gambia Today. The country is entering an important period. The presidential election is approaching. Political alliances are changing. Opposition parties are negotiating. The government is launching development projects. Economic questions remain. Education results are being examined. And ordinary Gambians are watching all of it. The next few months will be very important for the Gambia. And this channel will be here to follow the story. If you enjoyed today's news, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button. Share this video with your friends and family, and leave a comment telling us, what is the biggest issue you think Gambian politicians should address before the December election? Is it the economy, education, healthcare, agriculture, unemployment, corruption, infrastructure, or something else? Let us know, because this channel is not only about talking to Gambians, it is about listening to Gambians too. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Gambia Today. Stay informed, stay peaceful, stay united, and remember, the Gambia belongs to all of us. Good night.